Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, John, and MSP. This is Ukraine War news update. First part thereof, I guess. It's going to confuse me because it's so late at night, and I don't know whether I'll do another one, and what day this is compared to the rest of the world, etc., etc. Nonetheless, we'll just go through this as quickly as I can. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for today. Before all the usual caveats apply, check out the description to the video below to see those caveats for these figures. 910 personnel lost for the Russians is a huge number. 11 tanks, um, 20 APVs, and 24 artillery systems. Those are significant figures across all of those categories. One anti aircraft warfare system, 27 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 8 pieces of special equipment. We have a large number of cruise missiles and drones from the previous night's attack. So that wasn't from last night at all. But those are big, fairly big numbers there posted by the general staff. And when we look at the Andrew Perpetua's loss stats, we see enough. I mean, it's just a phenomenal set of equipment being lost by the Russians. So it's just a massive, massive amount of stuff. Now, a fair bit from the Ukrainians. There's a decoy at the bottom, so you can take that off. But that's still like a 4-to-1 ratio when the the Russians lost a massive amount. Okay, let's go and look at the Ukrainians' equipment first. Um, they include a Baba Yaga. That's maybe a $30,000 piece of kit, $20,000 to $30,000. I I wouldn't bother putting that on there personally. And a decoy, a tree damaged there by a lancer. He often puts those little jokes on there, but essentially, you've got some howitzers, an unknown tank, Humvee, M113, uh, pickup trucks, SUVs, not very high value equipment. Okay, when we go to the Russian losses, we've got some surveillance comms equipment, recovery, Brem 1, engineering vehicle as well. So they can be seen as fairly high value. We've got some artillery pieces and not particularly high value artillery. The Tulpan is a 240 millimeter self propelled mortar there. Pretty devastating bit of kit. Some quite a lot of tanks, although not being identified yet because imagery doesn't allow for that. It's not close enough, or possibly too fundamentally damaged to see what the tanks were. But that's a lot of tanks. And infantry fighting vehicles, we've got BMP ones, threes, various ones, some BTR there as well. Trucks and civilian vehicles, a lot of civilian vehicles. So yeah, that is just a lot of kit that the Russians have lost. And we go back and look at the general staff figures, and you think, yep, that's somewhat justified when you see stats like that. So pretty astounding numbers of vehicles. There's a lot of FPV drone and night vision FPV drone footage to show. There's some artillery there as well, interestingly, and some D pickums and cluster munitions used as well. But particularly for the civilian vehicles, a lot of drones hitting those. So it looks like there's been some montages of drone footage coming out to all at once to show those losses. Right, a really big loss. This an experienced Ukrainian pilot that's flown 385 sorties has been lost. The report is, well, I've seen it reported as a Su-24 and a Su-25 pilot, so I'm not 100% sure. But if it's a Su-24 pilot, they are the airframes that fire the Storm Shadows, and there aren't very many of those. And if that is the case, then this is going to be a massive loss, not just in terms of the pilot. It's obviously a huge loss for the Ukrainians, but in terms of that airframe as well, they are thin on the ground for those. So this is a significant loss. Although no details about that, it does say killed in action, which means or indicates that that was someone that was killed in the air, which means that the airframe will be lost as well, rather than, I don't know, in his barracks, or you know run into his plane or something like that. It seems like this is a loss from the air. Now, at the same time, the Russians have lost a Ka-52 attack helicopter around Avdiivka, which is a pretty big loss. They are they're a very capable helicopter, but they have lost rather a lot of them over the course of the war. So at least the Ukrainians have something to show in the air as well. Now, this is some footage of a Baba Yaga causing quite a bit of damage to an area here. Just going to show this to you, a little bit of this. It's just a depot with a vehicle, all sorts of um, destroyed stuff around here, smoking truck there. The, the, these Baba Yagas, these vampire drones, octocopters that can drop some fairly significant ordnance, are pretty feared by the Russians. They have night vision, they're pretty elusive, they're quite resistant to electronic warfare. These are causing the Russians quite a lot of consternation at the moment. So anyway, that's an ammunition depot that's been taken out. Here we have Russian telegram channels reporting an explosion and a fire on a pipeline in the Perm region of Russia. That is one big fire going off there. Don't know what the cause of that was. And we have another fire, Moscow this time. Big fire in a residential area. It's approximately 4,000 square meters and already spreading to neighboring buildings. This is pretty huge. And yet another example of Russia on fire. Things are not looking good inside Russia. Two very significant fires going on there. Right, when we go into strikes, this is from last night, seems so long ago now. In total, Russia is known to have fired 17 drones into Ukraine during the night. 11 of them were shot down. That means 6 weren't shot down and have probably found their targets. They were all launched from Crimea, which is interesting. Mykolaiv, Odessa, Vinnytsia, and Dnipropetrovsk were targeted. There's quite a lot of footage coming out from Odessa. Russia's drone attack lasted more than 5 hours. First photos from Odessa, where there were 2 strikes. One target was this college. 2 policemen who were on their way to reports of the first explosion were injured. Both are in hospital. So yeah, the Russians not quite sure what that would have been used for, that college, and whether it's a legitimate target for the Russians or whether it's just, flinging these drones into non-military targets. Yeah, the other damage in Odessa came in an unfinished apartment block being built, so on and so forth. So Mykolaiv as well had some fairly significant damage caused by either direct hits or falling debris. There were also strikes on Belgorod. So in Russia, the Ukrainians have targeted Belgorod 2 nights in a row or 2 days in a row. Explosions are heard in the city again, and missile danger has been declared in the city. Don't know anything else about that or indeed the attacks from the day before. Now, I've done a separate video on Zaluzhny being shifted from his position of commander-in-chief by Zelensky. It's fairly controversial, as you can imagine. Go and check out what I talk about in that video that I published just before this. So we won't talk about that. On other bits and pieces, Russian Senate supports a bill on asset confiscation as punishment for discrediting the army. Now, this I find interesting because it shows you how desperate they are for money. We know that they bought Shahed drones off Iran for a lot more money than was originally thought, and they were using gold to do that. They appear to be using gold in a number of places to buy things. They are having to take payments in yuan and in rupees from China and Russia for their hydrocarbons. The economy seems to be teetering on the brink, although we've said that for a long time. I think things, though, are economically very challenging for Russia. So it's no surprise that they are starting to do things like, well, changing the rules so that we can just asset strip people, take money off people if they criticize the war. So not only is that about stamping down on dissent, but it's also about earning a few quid for the government. There are claims of hacking. I believe this is true. It's quite widely reported that the drone control program has been hacked. Software installed on DJI drones for war use appears to have been hacked by Ukrainian tech experts, hackers. So that will be incredibly important, I think if it is as significant as I hope it is, drones are such a major component of this war, and if Ukraine can do something to hamper Russia's use of drones, then that's going to be really really important. Russian billionaire Anisimov has renounced his citizenship. Vasily Anisimov has renounced his citizenship, becoming the seventh billionaire to do so after Russia launched its full-scale war against Ukraine. This is obviously going to be to do with trying to get around sanctions and trying to seem to be on the side of the West more generally, so that they aren't as economically hamstrung by being affiliated with Russia. Um, on February the 8th, Ukraine returned home 100 POWs from Russian captivity. There were ceasefires in those areas. This was really good news. Another big swapping of POWs there. And here we have a claim that really hope the folks in DC are paying attention to reports that Russia is using Elon Musk's Starlink in occupied Ukraine with registered accounts. Now, this is interesting because not yesterday I reported that uh, Starlink um, coverage inside Ukraine, or the I can't think of the word. Sorry, I have a right brain meltdown. Signal. Starlink signal for the Ukrainians was absolutely knackered. They had very poor signal, and some people are saying that actually that's a lot to do with Elon Musk getting involved. I don't know, but it seems pretty interesting that the next day there are the widespread reports that the Russians are using Starlink and with registered accounts, and that would be not only majorly violative of sanctions, so in violation of international sanctions, but a clear national security risk. If that is true, then, and that's coming from Newsweek, then, well, Elon Musk should be hauled over the hot coals, quite frankly, because that is not good enough. Anyway, that's the news video for the hits and losses, strikes, and other. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do anything else. I might squeeze out the military aid video next. Toodle pips.